I know we have a heavy agenda, uh, but oh, there he is. There's Joe.
Good time.
Hey, sorry I'm late.
That's okay. Thank you for joining us.
Warming up dinner.
So we've called to order, and I was just saying we have quite a long agenda. I don't think it's as bad as, I mean, it looks worse than it really is. And I know we probably won't get to everything, but I'd rather have it out there for us to have, more time to read through it. If we have to table some items at the end and save it for our next monthly meeting, we can do that. And also, we are meeting at 7:30, so I'd like to end, well before that, so we have a break to, get a drink of water and like reset ourselves and refocus. So hopefully by 7:15, that was me. Okay, so Kevin, would you like to take it away?
Absolutely. So good evening, everyone. So this is the ambitious and overwhelming agenda that Rachel was talking about, but honestly, it's really not as bad as it looks right now. So first, let me just provide a little overview. The first three policies that you see at the top in number 2, we have community relations and appeals, and then B, we have instruction and special education 6171, and then policy 6159, instruction and special education. And these three policies are coming back for a second read. You might recall I did not hear any objection or questions regarding B and C, the 2 special education policies, but we still continue to have our expertise with us in case we had any questions with Kelly online. You might recall Joe Britton did have a question or concern about a line that we had in community relations and appeals. So I recommend that we revisit that line in the policy, and I will bring that to your attention when we circle back to A. In number 3, for policies for consideration, this is, and I love telling stories like this. So this is November 2019. The board previous to this one, in committee, approved the policies in front of you for first reading, A through C and D through H. And so A through C, and this information is available for you and then the board and the community. These policies were approved by our board years ago. I will show you some of them were approved as far back as 2008. But as part of the policy audit, they had been renumbered. And so this is really just for information for the board, but since they are your bylaws, all of the policies are yours, but particularly since they're your bylaws, I thought you might want to see them. And so, quickly by selecting a link, you'll have an opportunity to review role of board members, transaction of business, conferences, conventions, and workshops. Again, these are all already approved by the board. No action required, but I left them available for the board and for the policy committee to review.
Kevin, quick question. Did we get this document before?
Yes. So my
This isn't the agenda that I have.
It looks a little different, Joe. But Kara did. She copied and pasted mine. But if you select the link still works. So for example, even in the PDF, the link should still work. Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it should be the same content.
Okay, because the iteration I had only had 1, 2, A, B, C, 3, and 4. It didn't have any of this detail.
She updated on Tuesday, Joe. So I don't know if you may have printed out the Monday version.
I printed out the Monday version because I always look at everything the day before.
No, so Friday was one, and then it was updated, I believe, on Monday.
Oh, okay, that might be it.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
And then,
okay.
And then, last but not least, so the actual policies that I'm going to ask this group to review this evening is policies for consideration is, and this is an attorney, and this is appointing an attorney on behalf of the board, board representatives, and we'll have an opportunity to review this, reimbursement, particularly for conferences, issues related to conflict of interest, and then time, place, and notice of meetings. And I think this is the one in particular that I think Rachel is afraid we might not have enough time to really, really dig in deep. So without further ado, I will circle back to second reading for policies up here, A, B, and C. And I thought I would start with community relations. And again, you might recall Joe had a question about this line, so I highlighted it for the group. Complaints about the board policy should be directed to the superintendent of schools. Complaint shall be in writing and signed, stating the specific objections to the policies. Superintendent shall review any complaint and conduct whatever study of it or investigation he or she deems appropriate. The superintendent shall then submit the complaint and his or her recommendation to the board. We had added this language, we had modified this language a little bit. And so just wondering how the committee would like to move forward on this, leave it the way it is, not sure.
Anyone have any comments
mm.
about I mean, I'm fine with the way it's written. I think the explanation given to Joe at the board meeting was sufficient. And explained, our conversation that we had at our original committee meeting. He also, and I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but he also said, he mentioned a time, time-wise for a turnaround of, action. So I don't know if we want to put in language. I mean, it could be simply just the superintendent shall then submit the complaint and her recommendation to the board in a timely fashion, in a timely manner,
Sure.
or within 30 days from the complaint. I don't know
Promptly.
how you feel about that.
I would be inclined to keep the language we added last meeting, but if you want to put in a timely fashion, promptly, 30 days, any of those, I timely fashion probably gives a little bit more flexibility to the super, depending on when we are. I mean, a complaint in July, returning it in 30 days is irrelevant. We're not there. So maybe it makes sense to, like you said, in a timely fashion. If people like that.
Anyone else care to weigh in?
I don't have any preference at all. I think it's fine the way it's written.
It's fine the way it's written.
I agree.
I agree. And I don't, I mean, if you want to add in, like Joe was saying, some vague language, but it doesn't hold us to anything. So I'm not sure it even serves any function.
Yeah. Putting
Okay.
more
Agreed.
words in that we don't need.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I just wanted to open up the discussion. So I will ask for a motion to recommend this policy for a second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Kate and seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great.
Okay, thank you.
And that number was.
That was 13, I'm sorry, that was 1312.2.
Point two.
And the next one is policy 6171. And again, I did not hear any objections or questions or concerns, but just in case the committee had an interest in updating anything, it's an opportunity.
I think
Is
they're
this
both
big enough?
fine.
Is this big enough for everyone?
Yes.
This is the same thing we saw at the last meeting, committee meeting and the last board meeting.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm okay with B and C.
Okay. Yes, me too. Yes. So again, I'll ask for a motion to bring both B and C then.
Motion.
Second.
Catherine.
Moved by Catherine,
Second by Joe.
seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So we're good with A through C.
Okay. All right, great. So if it is okay, I will take, Rachel, would you prefer that I do a quick overview of A, B, and C that's being renumbered, or go straight to the ones that are going to require action?
Is it just the renumbering, Kevin? And
It
do we
is.
need to have a second, we need to bring it to the full board for a second reading then from?
So these three, no.
Okay.
They just happen to be in our manual being renumbered. We actually, in our committee, we did not look to change anything. We just literally just renumbered them. These, we looked at all of them for first read. And then I think we had discussed, and I think we should talk about it this evening, how we want to move forward here. I'm assuming we want to count this as the first reading.
Yeah, yes, I think so. So I don't think we need to review the renumbered
Okay.
A, unless, does anyone have any objections to that? Okay,
No objection.
okay, great. So let's continue to D then.
Okay. Well, I'm excited. We might get through all of them now. This is great.
Could somebody do me a favor and email me the agenda with the link? I just went back to my agenda. I had links for the ones we did last week, but where it says bylaws 9,000 series, it's not a hyperlink. So I don't have the actual
Try this.
policies. Thanks,
Try
Kate.
this,
That's
Joe.
perfect. Oh, perfect. Thank you. That'll make it easy.
So Rachel,
Yes.
we don't have to make a motion to go for second reading for the policies, the bylaws 9,000 series.
Not A through C.
Okay. Thank you.
So I just gave you rights, Joe. It should be fine.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Go.
Perfect.
Okay, so I will open up policy 9125. And I'll just give the committee a little update, just so you're aware. Previously, the next few policies that we're going to be looking at, the previous committee had approved this bylaw without the alternate language. I am going to undo the strike through so that you can also review this as a committee yourself. And I will let me take this out now just so you can see the language. Okay. So I think as we read this, you're gonna see that the bylaw is pretty consistent with what we are already doing. And the board may appoint either on a full-time or on a retainer basis an attorney or attorneys to serve as a school attorney. And then it talks about the primary function of the attorney is to provide professional legal counsel and representation for the board and the superintendent. Here's the alternate language that was not accepted by the last committee. And then this next paragraph was accepted by the last committee. Which is, again, is pretty consistent with our practice now. If I can go down, this is the alternate language that was provided.
Where did the alternate language come from?
So these two alternate language boxes, Joe, were provided by CAPE as options. And then some expectations of the attorney are below. Representing the board in legal proceedings, give his or her written opinion on all legal questions and refer to him or her by the Danbury Board of Ed or the superintendent. Attend board meetings, Board of Education's meeting conferences and other meetings as requested by the board, superintendent or board chair or board committee. Fulfill such other legal duties as the Danbury Board of Ed may assign. And then, sorry, this again, these are some alternate language that was offered that was not accepted previously. I'll undo this now. In this language, it just kind of spells out the type of activities the legal services could provide, whereas up further, it said as we may see fit or as we want to assign them.
The non-stricken language that had been previously approved looks fine. Doesn't look like there's anything in the language that had been stricken that's inherently better. Might be more more complicated.
Right.
Simpler seems to make more sense. I mean, any of the language in here is fine. It's not like anything in here is bad. But what had been not stricken in the original draft, for lack of a better term, I think that language all works. It seems, I mean, it seems fine to me, and it looks not inconsistent with, you know, some of the background stuff that my firm has, because we represent a public agency as well. And it's not that different than what we have.
Okay. And so for clarification, this line, everything in black was part of the original that had been approved by the previous committee. The two alternate languages in red were not accepted by the previous committee.
I only thought on this one, and I know Kate and I were probably on that original committee that did these, so it's like we're you know, doing double work, unfortunately, but it's nice to have other, you know, eyes on it,
True.
especially from a legal perspective. But I'm just curious if there's value in adding from the first alternate language. The last sentence says the board reserves the right to obtain legal services outside of its designated attorney law firm as deemed appropriate. I don't see, and if I missed it, please let me know, but I don't see that in our approved language. And I wonder if that's worth having there just for future board members is, oh,
Yeah, it's like a fail safe just in case.
I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt. I mean, I think the line in the first paragraph, the Board of Education, either on a full-time or retainer basis, an attorney or attorneys to serve as school attorney. I mean, that contemplates retention of more than one. But if we want to include that language in there, just to be clear, kind of like in the last one where we make it clear we don't have to do anything, it doesn't hurt. There's no harm in adding that one sentence to the end of the previous paragraph.
But why would we do it? Are we going to sue the attorney that we have already?
I
mean,
would think it's more like a lack of
would you-
confidence, Maybe you hire somebody for this, to serve in this capacity, and you find that they're not operating the way you're
Or
hoping they
another
will.
attorney could offer another level of expertise, maybe
Yeah.
depending on the situation.
I would read it as we're retaining, instead of retaining the people, we're retaining specialty counsel for a specialty issue.
Can we
Because,
say
you know, I mean, as it stands right now between Kim and Shipman and Goodwin, we pretty have most of our bases covered, but you could get something esoteric that comes down the road and you want to hire, you know, the pro from Dover, you're going to hire the nationwide leading expert who's out of Chicago to come here and be admitted
I
pro
see.
hoc under Shipman.
Okay.
That's really where that language would come in.
Okay. In that context, it makes sense. but wouldn't we be able to do it anyway?
Yes,
Yes, I look at it just as like an educational, just something to make other board members, future board members aware that that's like, I wouldn't necessarily have known that if I, hadn't experienced, something.
it's also covered to the public. Yeah,
Right.
it explains that we don't have to use the people we've already hired. We could hire somebody else for a one-off if we need to.
Right.
So I'll leave this line here, add it on to the end of the first paragraph. And
Restrike.
mhm. All right. Okay. So
I think we can restrike
I
that.
agree.
All
Totally
other
agree.
alternate language.
Yeah. That alternate language there would make more sense if we didn't have Kim in-house, where our only counsel were out of the office on a contract basis.
I
We
see.
want to limit
Okay.
who was asking.
And then the attorney shall, this language was in there before. I don't know if it helps or hurt us one way or the other.
Fine.
I think it's fine to leave it.
It's what they do.
Right. And
And strike out the alternate language.
okay. Okay.
Okay.
So this is 9125. I don't want to close it out until you have your vote,
Should we do a vote for
just in
each one?
case. I'm sorry, that's up to you. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure how you wanted to handle that one.
Make a
Remind me,
motion with,
This is a first reading now.
Yes, I think that's how you agreed you wanted to move forward.
Yes, okay. So
make a motion, we approve approve to send to the board for first reading 9125A.
Second.
okay, motion made by Joe, seconded by Kate, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved.
Excellent. So the next one is policy 9140. We actually have 3 statements to consider, but they're all very short, and frankly, I don't think it's powerful, but quick and short. And so sample A, give you an opportunity to read this one. It might be easier to pull this up. They're all on separate pages right now, but it might be easier to see it this way. This is sample B.
So my thought on this is the first one is more aligned with how we operate already. We have, the city building committee, for example, where I sit, Kathy, I know you sat. So I think that tailors it more to us rather than the second one, which designates the superintendent as, the official representative. But I will open up the floor for any other comments.
First one makes sense to me. The second two are written in such a way as the reason why people hate lawyers too. The first one's much clearer and much simpler.
And I'll just scroll down so everyone can see C.
Amen.
And this is C. I don't know if C offers much. Oh,
The first one's better.
Yeah,
It's clearer, it's simpler.
yeah.
okay.
Any other thoughts, comments? Okay, so I will ask for a motion to bring to the
Motion.
board the
I'll
first.
do the motion. Motion to accept P 9140 board representatives as example A. Is that right?
Yes. Thank you, Catherine. Is there a second?
Second,
Second, Becky, all in favor?
aye,
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
I did, Kathy. It's
Thank
Kate.
you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Kate. Missed it.
Okay, and then the next policy is 9250, remuneration and reimbursement. And this one is also pretty straightforward, a little longer, but a little straightforward. And there is alternate language also here for us to consider. So I hope you're not disappointed to learn this. Sorry. Um, and then there is some language about reimbursement for out-of-state. There is some language here for out-of-state travel and in-state travel here. I think it's pretty straightforward. And some alternate language here for the committee to consider. And then, I'm sorry, all of this was actually, this is the only part that was alternate language. 1 through 6 was part of the original.
Oh, really?
Mhm. And I'll confirm, I'll go back to the document, but that- I
Oh,
believe
so
that's
the alternate language is the alternate to the paragraph above it.
right. Right.
Okay.
Well, sorry, let me double check that.
Yeah, because it looks like, you know,
Yeah, I see the colon there.
And there's a difference in that the top part, they're talking about what they consider reasonable expenditures versus, you know, specific, it says legitimate costs, you know. And so I think that's why they're spelling it out underneath. These are the specific things that you could reimburse for.
Do we need to be that specific? Because if the travel's approved in the first place, wouldn't all of those things just be the normal incidentals to travel? If we're approving the travel?
Yes, I think the only reason you might change something like this is if you were seeing a pattern of, or, you know, an instance where somebody was asking for reimbursement that was, and granted reimbursement that was not reasonable.
I haven't heard a lot of incidents of Danbury Board of Ed members junketing places fancy, so.
Nah, I pay my own way as it is. I pay my own fees.
My apologies, 1 through 6 is part of the alternate language to consider.
so it sounds like we're okay with the original without the alternative. So
Okay.
I'll ask for a motion for first reading then.
So moved.
Moved by Joe,
Seconded.
by Catherine, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And there is a form, right?
There is a form, they have to, the formatting was, I couldn't copy and paste because of the formatting. I'm not sure what was wrong with it. So I think I'm gonna have to print out a hard copy to get it in there. Once this is over, Rachel, I can go back and see if I can pull the form up for everyone to see the form. So the next one is 9273 conflict of interest. And it's essentially a civility code for the board. And almost like a statement. So some boards actually have a statement on their website. And as a member of the Board of Ed, I will strive to improve education, and to that end, I will. And then here are the following statements. There's also an alternative at the bottom to consider.
Rachel, may I jump in
Sure.
with a comment here?
Yeah.
I certainly like the idea of this. I'm a little unclear about how we could really enforce this policy in any way, or what function it necessarily serves as a policy. You know, this is very broad and subjective, so it's kind of tough. Am I correct in understanding this is optional, Kevin?
It is not required. It is a policy that the previous committee had requested and had a first reading for.
And it's a bylaw. I know that's still a policy, but it's, you know, it doesn't,
It's not the same way as like an actual policy.
right.
Right.
It's not enforceable, but it's good information. It's a good teaching, and
And helps kind of ground you as a board. I mean, it's almost like not your norms, but almost like your values as a board.
Theoretically, it's all stuff we should be doing anyway.
right.
Yes.
Right. But
Ru-
sometimes
rules
you
of
need it in
engagement.
writing for, you know, and to go back to.
There should be a place to sign
Yes.
in blood.
In blood, right?
There's also another way that has been used in the past. When someone gets out of control, we immediately go into, we just stop the meeting and I'm at a loss for words right now. But anyway, we go into executive session.
Executive session.
And then you get a reprimand and we come out of executive session and continue with the board meeting. So there are ways to rein people in, but you have to have a strong leader and someone who recognizes when people get out of control. Gladys, you're there, you know how people get out of control. So
Yeah,
there is a mechanism already when we go into
yes,
executive
we
session.
don't use it.
Beat that person up and then return.
Right. And that's one of the things one of the questions that came up in a meeting with Cable a couple of weeks ago. I was in a workshop as to one of the boards were having a problem with a couple of their members, and you just stop the meeting, have the chair stop the meeting, go into executive session, and recommend the person, and then come back out.
So to the point that Kathy just raised, at the bottom of this policy to consider is a version essentially regarding norms. And the language is a little more simple, just in terms about mutual respect, civility, etc. And just kind of giving straightforward norms and expectations for board members. And so, of course, if any of these norms are violated, to Kathy's point, can immediately go into executive session and address them, and then come back out with the public again.
I think version 2 is a little less wordy and a little more to the point.
Either one probably works. I mean, they're it's aspirational. We can't require it. We can't mandate it. We can't really do anything to anybody who doesn't abide by them, but we should have them just as a statement that this is what we're trying to achieve. Either version, I think, works. But you're right, Kathy, the second version's simpler.
But not only, Joe, at board members, we haven't been going, and this is something that we really need to talk about as a board.
I would just point out also that in the top version, it says clearly distinguish opinions from facts, render all decisions based on the available and verifiable facts, and my independent judgment, and refuse to surrender that judgment to individuals or special interest groups. I'm not sure that that's covered by the shorter version.
I think there's a lot that's not covered by the shorter version. I like both versions, and maybe we could keep both. Because there are some things that are just not covered that I think are, just good to have knowledge of as a board member.
Would it make sense to bring this back in April and try to figure out a way to merge the two of them together into one?
Yeah, we can try and, yeah, I can try and mold the two together in some kind of more, cohesive, coherent way, and then bring it back at our next meeting if you'd like.
Because there's nothing bad in either one. But
Yeah.
you're right. There's certainly things covered in the first one, not covered in the second.
But then
So there's certainly some overlap in some of them, and perhaps we can remove some of the overlap and then represent it to
add the
this
other ones.
committee. Okay.
Is there, this is Catherine, but is there anything also in there? A lot of it that I see says in person, but if we're not in person, and what if it goes to like a social media or something like that? Is there anything like that in there?
we have a whole section on social media, I think. A whole other separate.
Policy, bylaw.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So let's do that then. I'll try and, cut some of this out and then bring it back in
So we're
April.
tabling 9273A.
We will table it if that's, do I need a motion?
I'll make a motion to table it.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second,
Thank you. Okay.
Rachel, would you like me to proceed?
Please, thank you.
Okay. So the last policy for consideration is 9321, time, place, and notice of meetings. The first two, regular meetings and special meetings, are frankly essentially how we do business. And then 3, meeting time and place is also essentially how we do business. And then we're going to see that CABE is offering a bylaw to consider, and this is going to be about electronic meetings. And so my recommendation to the board is that we start at the top and make sure we're fine with the language that's here. And I think the conversation is really going to pick up when we evaluate or review the options for the electronic meeting. So I'll just start here. And just for the record, this was previously approved. This was actually sent to us because they wanted us to consider the electronic. CABE was not recommending it necessarily at the time. This was pre-COVID, but they were asking all of the boards to review that option for electronic participation. So this is actually already an approved policy.
Pretty much dovetails with FOIA on public meetings anyway.
Right. So please let me know when I can go to the next, scroll down to special meetings.
I think we're all set to move on.
Okay. An opportunity to call a special meeting. Making sure that we have appropriate notice and purpose of the meeting with at least 24 hours advance notice for the community.
Okay.
And this is in the event we need an emergency meeting. And then if we do have an emergency meeting, minutes need to be made available for the public no later than 72 hours according to the bylaw.
Okey doke.
Okay. Meeting time and place of our meetings. Time it would start. Ending no later than 10 o'clock. And happening 2 times a month. I might be ahead of myself. I believe it's.
This doesn't count, just to be clear, at the 10 p.m., that doesn't count towards executive sessions or anything like that. It's just a regular board meeting.
That is my understanding. But we do have to come back. We're supposed to come back to the public though. So
Yeah.
I guess that
Yeah,
could
if
be
we're-
problematic.
I'm just asking because I know that there was at least one circumstance I can think of that we were in person until past 10, which, I'm not sure anybody's going to go digging through our bylaws and be like, well, but it's just something to think about because if
We
run
can
into
go,
that
we,
again,
we can go past 10. We just don't
we have to vote for it according to this, unless extended to a time certain by a 2/3 vote of the board members present.
Or we can, as it begins at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter, we can end at 10 p.m. or soon thereafter.
As long as nobody objects to 10 going past 10 p.m., it doesn't really matter what it's not like anything bad happens if we go past 10 without a vote. We just can't force it.
Okay.
Before we go any farther, one stupid picayune little change. All of these things require notice to the city clerk. We no longer have a city clerk. The Danbury City Charter was changed and the position is now legislative assistant. And I believe she's the repository of all of these notices. It's either her or the town clerk. It's one or the other. We just have to figure out to whom it gets sent. And FOIA may determine who it gets sent to, but we technically don't have a city clerk anymore. So we may have to go back and fix that. We don't have to worry about that tonight. We just may have to add that later.
So do we want to change the wording around 10 p.m.? No,
I don't think so.
you know,
Yeah,
I don't care. I just wanted to point it out.
yeah. Okay, so we'll leave it then.
as long as there's coffee in the kitchen, I'll go past 10, no problem.
I'll be happy just to get back in the kitchen and the building again, Joe.
Yeah, touche,
That's right.
touche.
And then, of course, special meetings that are non-emergency, the place and time are also announced in advance. No news there. No new news there, right? And so this one, then this is a suggested bylaw to consider. This is essentially, if we liked what we just read, I don't think we need this one, but I urge you to just maybe take a quick look. This one is not the electronic version.
Fine.
So we just have to change the town clerk in here if we use this?
Yes, I believe that was, excuse me for, hope I'm not making anyone dizzy. So I will do a word sort and find town clerk and I'll substitute that language.
City clerk is the officer that no longer exists. We have a town clerk, not a city clerk. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We just have to figure out who, if it's a legislative assistant or if it goes to the town clerk. That's all.
Okay. Okay. I'll find out. Sorry, I was writing that down. Okay, so this a lot to consider. I'll just go slow.
I think we're okay with this.
Okay. And then this is the last part of it with optional electronic participation. And so again, at the time, the language up here that's in bold, CABE does not recommend. This was again pre-COVID when this was shared with school districts in Danbury.
I wonder if they have an updated, if CABE has an updated alternate version then.
Yeah, if they have, I have not seen them. I mean, we've continued to send them our way, Rachel, but I have not seen anything in emails or those hard copies that they sent. But I can check again specifically and see if they have.
No, and I've been, every time they send a new policy, update, I've been reviewing them and I haven't come across it either.
Okay.
So this is not a policy designed or contemplating the governor's executive order that allows us to be meeting remotely.
No.
This is just a general policy.
Yes, Joe.
Okay.
And
I'm assuming we have no such policy now, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And essentially, to summarize, if you haven't seen it already, this policy is suggesting. So let's just say if, Joe, if it's okay, if I can pick on you, Joe was on the
Of
board,
course.
and Joe can participate electronically. He is available. He's in a private place. He is participating just like all of the other members. And then if he is, then the board would allow Joe to vote and take action just like everyone else. If he is not participating, and we'll see later in the language, then Joe can participate but can't take action along with his fellow board members. And so it just kind of speaks to some of those things ahead of time. If someone wants to participate electronically, the policy requests that the board chair is made aware prior to, so that that the board chair is made aware prior to the board meeting, and that the district is also made aware so that we can make accommodations at the board meeting, make sure we have the electronic equipment available at the board meeting for the meeting. I'm sure this will be a lot easier for us than it would have been prior to COVID for sure. So I'll just give you an opportunity to just take a look at this. Here.
So will the person who wants to join electronically be automatically okayed to go into executive session with us? I only see one.
If we're allowing them to participate as a member, I think we'd have to.
Even in executive session.
If they're being counted towards the quorum.
Mm-hmm.
My question would be, and we've had other conversations about this. I think Rachel, if I remember correctly, we had a conversation about whether or not if we allowed this kind of thing, whether folks would have a stake in voting, or if they would just count towards the quorum. Am I remembering that correctly?
We discussed this at length.
Mm-hmm.
and it was very passionate discussion.
We did not reach resolution.
It was pre-COVID though, so
Yeah.
you know, now that we have, you know, we're operating in a virtual world and it's possible. I don't know if it's worth having, you know, something that allows this going forward, you know, once we're out of the pandemic. It's very sticky. This, I think the way it's written here is it does give boards voting power as long as they're there for the discussion. You know, they can't just call in just to vote. They have to remain, you know, throughout the discussion of business. So it does, I didn't see anything about executive session, and that really worries me because you don't know if somebody's calling in, you don't know who else is around in the background. Same with how we operate on Zoom. And so I don't know. I was not a big supporter of this pre-COVID, but now that, you know, things are different, I don't think it's changed for me, but you know, I wonder how you all feel.
I wasn't here for the last discussion, obviously. I don't love this notion. In fact, I'm a little conflicted because a little part of me agrees with you, Rachel, that it's in a COVID world, it's a little different, which is why we're doing this by Zoom. A large part of me hates this idea. We actually confronted this. I spent 4 years on the board of directors for the Stanford Bar Association, Fairfield County Bar Association. We actually had people want to, board members meet remotely, be able to dial in or call in. We didn't allow it. And we had an attendance policy. If you didn't attend enough meetings, we boot you off the board, or not continue you in your second or third or fourth year. It was a 4-year hitch. Primarily because once you allow it, it becomes very easy to make that to be the only way you ever bother to attend.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we're going to get to a point, I'm afraid, where it's going to be Gladys and 10 speakers or recording devices or something. I don't love it. I understand why people would want to do it. And in a COVID world, maybe we have to figure out a way to make an exception if somebody has COVID, for example. But just as a general policy, I don't love this at all. I mean, we're elected officials, come to the meeting. Everybody's going to understand you're going to miss a meeting here or there. You get sick, you're out of town, you're traveling, that happens. It's not the end of the world. But, you know, I think we kind of need to be in the room.
That's pretty similar to the conversation we had last time, Joe. And, you know, one idea that we had kicked around, which I would just sort of reintroduce as a conversation, was the possibility of allowing folks to attend virtually and not have voting privilege. You know, in other words, if I'm out of town for a business meeting, I'd like to be able to attend the meeting or you know, hear it. But we've sort of worked around that anyways because we've got the YouTube stream. So I'm not even sure that that's necessary. It would, I guess it would only be pertinent if you had something that you wanted to contribute to the conversation at that point, rather than, you know, but it seems like if you're not there at the meeting, then you shouldn't be voting.
Then why are you dialing in?
You may have feedback or, you know, want to make a comment at the meeting about something.
Text one of your fellow members.
Yeah.
Email the chair.
Yeah, right. Email the chair. Right. I'm with you, Joe. I don't like this at all. I don't like it.
I understand why, but I understand why to do it, but I also don't love it.
I don't either. It makes people lazy, and it just leads to the wrong way to run a meeting or to conduct business. That's all down the road.
I agree.
Good.
I think the other thing to think about too is that if we were trying to run a meeting where we had some people attending virtually and others attending in person, even though our technology is better, the reality is you have somebody in the boardroom you know, with the camera who's taking footage, and I don't know how you splice that together with, you know, folks who are attending virtually. They're two different, you know, two different information streams. I don't know how you make sure that they match up. So I think, you know, there's some logistical challenges there too.
I can also tell you, I've done on a couple of occasions for isolated reasons, court hearings where I was standing in a courtroom next to the judge's bench while the judge is holding his cell phone on speaker up to a microphone to catch the other lawyer who's out of the country on the hearing. It's really awkward.
Yeah.
Really awkward. I mean, I think our technology would be better than holding up your speakerphone to the microphone in the courtroom, but it's still awkward.
Catherine, do you have anything you'd like to add to that? I don't think we've heard from you yet.
No, I'm listening to everyone and I totally agree. I don't think that we need that in there.
Okay. So is it okay? Can I ask for a motion to bring to the full board a first reading as originally approved?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second.
That's for 9321A.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That was easier than I thought it was going to be.
Yes, everyone just said no.
Yeah.
Good for
And
us.
so- that's right. And so
Yeah.
It's only 7 o'clock.
I know, we could have met at 7 o'clock, but now we get to have a break.
Okay.
And so last but not least, but I can do this in 1 minute, number 4, CABE policy service update. I did receive an update from CABE regarding our request to start to post the policies online before the entire manual is completed. And so the answer is yes, it can be done. The feedback that I received is it will take 4 to 6 weeks to do an analysis of the policies that we already have that can be posted immediately. And then it takes another 6 to 8 weeks to actually put together the platform to connect them to our website. So that means essentially we would have a K policy manual connected to the Danbury Public Schools website as early as August, September for the next school year.
Perfect.
And so it does come at an additional cost because the previous contract called for when we finish all of the policies, we would hand them over, give them one, and then they would post them. Now we're asking them for them to post them now, and then we continue to update them over the next few years. And so there is an additional cost, but quite frankly, I think it's a minimal cost given the availability of the non-availability of our policies. It's navigating our online management system, trying to find policies now are really challenging for our families and the public. And I think I think everyone's going to find this to be value added when this is completed.
Okay.
For sure. I went to look at something, for our next meeting and just
I think we lost you, Rachel.
For a change, it wasn't me.
We lost that last part, Rachel. You kind of tapped out.
We just heard a change.
It's been unstable all night, and it's yelling at me.
Mine too.
No, it's painful to try and search the way it is now on our website. Wasn't able to find what I was looking for, so I think it's sorely needed.
Okay, so I am done with the agenda. I will number 3G has been tabled until the next meeting. D, E, F, and H will move forward for first reading. A, B, and C, the 2 special ed policies and community relations will be forwarded for second reading at the next meeting.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you so much. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to
Motion.
adjourn.
Second.
Sorry, Kathy.
Sorry.
Oh, Catherine, sorry.
Yay.
That's okay.
Favor?
Who's
See
second?
you guys
Aye.
in 20 minutes.
Joe?
Aye.
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 See you guys soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.